And honorable members, nice to be here. And my initial gratitude to the President for nominating me to this position of Cabinet Secretary, Roads and Transport. Mr. Chairman, let me fast forward. I graduated in the year 1985 with a degree in physics and computer science from the University of Nairobi, and thereafter went into telecommunication industry, where I joined Kenya Post and Telecommunications and worked as a teletraffic engineer after a 9-month course at the then Central Training School, where I learned the intricacy of managing traffic going into the various routes across the whole world, dimensioning, congestion, and things like that. Subsequently, I did rise in that position to the level of general manager, where I managed the ICT, Information, Communication, and Technology. And in the nascent period of liberalization, I managed the divestiture and liberalization of telecommunication as a change manager, where we did at that time the Communication Authorities regulations, laws and regulations that spinned off what is now the Communication Authority, which is the regulator in the telecoms industry, spinned off Postal Corporation and Telecoms Kenya, and issued the various licenses to Safaricom and Celtel at that time. Something that then catapulted the growth of telecommunication in what became competitive and very competitive from the monopolistic management of telecommunication at that time done by Kenya Post and Telecommunications. I later on moved on, honorable members, chairman, as commissioner, where I worked in the interim electoral commission. Soon after the challenge that this country faced during the post-election, I came in as one of the electoral commissioners, where I spearheaded various reforms, processes that built confidence that had been totally destroyed in the electoral process, and where Kenyans at that time did not believe in exercising their democratic right through the vote or the ballot. We built system at one time, Chairman, honorable members, the Electoral Commission at that time was the most trusted organization in Kenya, ahead of the media and, of course, ahead of Parliament at that time. Honorable members, after the term of reform, which also catapulted the promulgation of the new constitution, where we ran the referendum in the year 2010, we were part of crafting Chapter 7 of the constitution, which today really brings out the electoral process, management of the credibility of the vote, to the extent that when the ballots are counted at the polling station and transmitted to the central tallying center, it doesn't matter what you do at the central tallying center, because the results would have been announced in each and every of the 22,000 plus polling centers in the country, with the technology that pushes them to the cloud today, and everybody participates in the counting. Even when we've had the results we had in 2 years, where the difference between the winning party and the losing party was 60,000, we were able to come out of the electoral process with acceptance of those electoral results. In the year 2012, I had a stint of going close to politics when I became the Secretary General of the then party, URP, where we worked with a number of leadership to form government, and I then thereafter was nominated and subsequently appointed to the position of Cabinet Secretary, Energy and Petroleum, a role I did work on for 2 years before a list of shame was placed it to Parliament, and I was one of them, and of course several members of Parliament, and we went through the due process, and we got out of it over time, but not before some of our careers were unnecessarily tainted because of the procedure that was adopted at that time. Honorable members, I have walked the journey, and I come here today, 2022 again. I was nominated and appointed after the Kenya Kwanza won to this position that I've been nominated to. I was nominated to the position of Cabinet Secretary, Energy and Petroleum, and I did serve in that position until the 11th of July, when the entire cabinet was dismissed. Honorable members, I have done some significant work in my career, in my journey, in terms of creating and adding value to this economy, in building systems, and I have legacies which I do pride of today. And today I stand before you, I sit before you as a nominee for CS, roads, and transport. Let me leave it at that for now, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, that will do. We'll now invite members.
In generation, we do generate power from solar, from wind, from geothermal. Those are the three cheapest cost of generation, including, of course, hydro. And the most expensive generation is from thermal. And during times of drought, we run thermal more because the hydrology would be low. Because of the hydrology having been good in the past 1 year, we've had a lot of water, so we are running our Kiambere, Kindaruma, Gitaru, Cascade fairly well. But more importantly, the mix to ensure that we do not dispatch the expensive power when we don't need to is a very important component in managing the cost of power. One of the profound things we've done, Chairman and honorable members, which I might even call legacy, is switching off a power plant called Moroni, which is very expensive. It dispatches power at about 70 shillings per kilowatt hour. Moroni GT, which is somewhere between Kisumu and Moroni. We all know where Moroni is. We have also switched off a power plant called Kipevu 1. Moroni generates 60 megawatts. Kipevu 1 generates 74 megawatts. At end of life, it has reached end of life, and we switched it off. And likewise, we've switched off 76.4 megawatts in Kipevu 2. These power plants alone, Chair, if to contextualize, it generates 210 megawatts, dispatches about 15% because it's only used for picking, but the cost to the economy is about 10 billion Kenya shillings annually, when it is dispatching at 15%. If we have to dispatch more because of not obeying the order of merit of economic order of merit of supply, the bill would go from 10, 15 to 20 billion. Those power plants are down. The promoters of these power plants have been through this town to see everybody to try and bring them back. But because of the cost of doing business, it doesn't make sense to give them another lease of life. The challenge of climate change commitment, which we have made for 2030 to be 100% green, is another one which has catapulted this country and placed it in a very, very good pedestal. So, Chair, let me end that initial question by saying it will be of interest for members when you write the report, to check and confirm that in the month of July, both cost of electricity and cost of petroleum products is the lowest in the country in the last 15 months. And it takes a real difficult position to sustain those power plants not to be switched off, not to be switched on again because of what I've said, the cost of doing business and the climate change commitment which we've made for this country. As regarding some of the things that I will do where I'm going in the roads and transport, Honorable Chairman, honorable members, it's an interesting area. It will be interesting to note that where I come from in energy, or where I've served twice before, If we have one pending bill, it is due to a court case. We don't have any pending bills. I have quickly checked the road sector with a pending bills of about 166 billion, with unfunded commitments of about 1 trillion. Some with the Chinese government and some with the local contractors, unfunded. And I don't know, I've also checked, Honorable Chairman, that the exchequer support that goes to roads annually is about 55 billion. So if that continues, it will take us in excess of 20 years to finance what has been committed today, leave alone financing the pending bills, which sits at 94 billion with an interest, forex gains and what have you of adding up to about 166. And therefore, there is a job to be done, Chairman, members, and I think we'll have to work together given the challenge that we have a finance bill that has not gone through. Luckily, where I come again, maybe to give a bit of hope to where I'm going to, is that all energy works is off balance sheet. And it will be of interest to members and, of course, Honorable Chairman, to note that energy deals with a budget of about $10 billion annually, all off balance sheet. And I sit here to basically pronounce that we are working to deliver the cheapest cost of electricity and today the cheapest cost of petroleum products in the country, albeit with no budget support, because all this is private capital off balance sheet. We do not have to work on the treasury balance sheet. Otherwise, we'll need 20 years, Chairman, to be able to fulfill those commitments that we have signed onto and that we have to deliver because they are contractual. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, if you allow me.
Yes.
If you allow me, just to follow up on what Davis is talking about, 1 trillion into commitment of 160 billion in debt. It looks really grim, you know, like you will run away from the job. What is it that you will do to attract capital and actually to offset the 1 trillion and also to pay the bills? Because you have done it in energy. What will you do? Because we want to see hope. Kenyans want to see what is it that Davis will do to change the story. Thank you.
Yes, Davis, and we had not also touched on Kenya Airways question.
Through Chairman Owen, it is difficult. It's early in the day after nomination, but I think it's possible. I've said we work off balance sheet in energy. And when you, Chairman, you have term sheets which stipulate that maybe the cost of constructing a kilometer of road or the cost of generating geothermal, if you are coming in as a private investor, should not be indicative tariffs. We gazette indicative tariffs through EPRA, where when you're generating power, we tell you if you're coming in, we're not signing if your tariff is above 6 cents US. So I think we should really be looking at frameworks like if you're coming in, we cannot sign a contract if you are building a road beyond 100 million Kenya shillings per kilometer, so that we don't get into commitments of trying to build a road for 500 million Kenya shillings per kilometer. And so even as you walk in to do your initial study, you don't spend time to push us to a commitment where we are building a kilometer for the price of 5, 6, 10 kilometers. We will need to look at, more importantly, how to work off balance sheet. When I say that $10 billion, it sounds crazy. But petroleum alone, which comes into Kenya today through the OTS or the current G2G at about 740,000 metric tons annually, costs the economy some $6 trillion crazy numbers. I mean, I just need to refer. 6 billion US dollars annually. And we do not have a time when the country is dry. Even at the peak time of the tightened monetary policy, when the Fed went into 5.5% interest and the interbank rates were crazy and there were no dollars in the industry, we did not run dry because we do not have to rely on the Treasury to help us to bring these necessary products to drive the economy. So we'll be looking together, honorable members, at how to resolve this challenge. It's a big challenge. Raising a trillion Kenya shillings to build those kilometers of roads where commitment has been given. Having to pay the 160, 170 billion Kenya shillings on bending bills and growing by the hour, growing by the day, is something that we can look at what you would call securitization of the little money we have in the road maintenance levy, and borrowing a bullet today and paying with an interest over 10 years, and we should be able to finance. As to whether those are acceptable, being in an IMF program today is something that we'll need to sit down together and resolve, because it's a commitment this country has made. We'll have to address it. Thank you.
Point of information, Speaker. Small point of information.
Yes, President.
This might be beneficial to the nominee, and I think I agree with him. The proposal of getting resources securitized by our instruments, which is, for example, fuel levy. In last Parliament, when I was chairing transport, Honorable Speaker, we actually proposed, and we have actually a legal instrument. We have the law, so which means the nominee might want to exploit that opportunity, Honorable Speaker. I thank you.
Yes, the Deputy Speaker is saying you have not touched on her question on Kenya Airways.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. Kenya Airways is another interesting investment, which you do know that we all love to have our Kenya Airways, and I think we should continue to have it and promote it. Kenya Airways, as we speak, and for the short time I've been preparing to appear before you, I do see Kenya Airways running a system that needs a lot of support, and where the Kenya government, I think to date, has given support to the tune of 600 billion Kenya shillings to be able to stay afloat, given the negative negative cash capital that they are operating in. Chair, I think the reforms at Kenya Airways, starting from the needs a lot of communication and ownership by the employees of Kenya Airways, and we're going to sit down and get them to understand that it's a problem that must be sorted out internally. The CBA, or the negotiated terms, and holding on to them when somebody else is having to pay your bill, is something that we'll really need to sit down as an enterprise, as Kenya Airways, and address. I've also seen Kenya Airways having a portfolio of flights that may not be suitable in the Embraer, which do not have the kind of bottom belly to carry the kind of luggage. And therefore, the first option when you're flying out or flying in, because of the way we carry 20, 30, 40 kilos, is not to fly Kenya Airways. So it is self-defeating to be having the highest fleet of about 13 Embraers aeroplanes in this fleet, and therefore giving us an uncompetitive advantage in terms of customers having to choose alternative flights when they might have actually wanted to fly Kenya Airways. Chairman, I do note that Kenya Airways in the past 2023 accounts had an operating profit of about 10 billion. We'll need to look at what they are doing right and build on that. Possibly take out some cost out of the system, because there are costs which we really must remove to be able to allow them to come out of the challenge they currently face. But more importantly, if you look at the 600 billion government support in Kenya Airways, And the fact that Kenya is today, the Kenya government owns about 49%, 48.9% of Kenya Airways. It will be, if we really kind of allowed government to pick more shares out of that 600 billion, government will go to a shareholding structure of about 80%. I think we need to bring in a partner. If you see successful hotels, allow me to use hotels, Chair, where they build networks around the world to be able to push their customers into their networks, we need to build a network of a supporting airline that we can leverage on to be able to bring Kenya Airways out of the current challenge they face. But more importantly, to support tourism, support our flower industry, support our green produce in avocado, the things we export because of the perishability very quickly into the external markets, and where the inflows in foreign currency is so significant. So we need to work on Kenya Airways. Thank you, Chair.
That will do. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honourable CS nominee, we just start maybe from where you stopped on Kenya Airways and ask you, we have listened to such stories. I think I've listened to those stories about KQ since I joined Parliament 12 years ago. I just want to be direct. Are we going to listen to that story from the next nominee after you? Or how long should you be approved? Will you commit to the people of Kenya that you can be able to sort out the problems of Kenya Airways? Because as you say, it's true, they are on operating profit, but when you factor in their financing costs, then they make huge losses. And then the story goes on and on and on and on forever. So you may need to tell us whether you truly mean business. Should you be approved, and how long it will take us to see a Kenya Airways that is truly functional, profitable, and is giving value to the people of Kenya. Because even nationalizing it, if you do not give value to the people of Kenya, then it may not make sense. That being so, you have been Cabinet Secretary for Energy, and you were at the time we did the famous G2G in the oil industry. You tell us how beneficial that G2G was. Was it beneficial to the country, or was it on net terms a loss to us in terms of the oil prices and all the other issues that Kenyans raise about the G2G? And more so in view of the current conversation. You've seen Kenyans online saying that the airport has been sold. Far from it from what we hear. And negotiations on PPP framework with the Adani Airport Holdings Limited. Are you the man to run this PPP with Adani or any other interested private equity partner that may come in? And can the people of Kenya trust that you will do it for value, for good value to the people of Kenya, if G2G was not of value to the people of Kenya? And I say if, because to be consequential to your first answer on G2G on oil. And maybe you would take a bit of time to tell us what you have been able to dig in your briefs from the ministry. I'm certain you've gotten briefs from the ministry on this Adani Airports Holdings PPP engagements, the engagements that are there. Lastly, just to add to what Honorable Kosing was saying, yes, the framework is there for leveraging on the RMLF funds on roads, but as you rightly say, with the programs that we are on and our debt ceiling, that may not be an option, a viable option for now, so you may need to really think out of the box in terms of funding our roads projects. Thank you.
Davis, try and compress the answers.
Thank you, Chair. I think KQ is, it needs, like I said, there'll be quick wins. There'll be the low-hanging fruits, like I said. I would like to sit down with the staffers and address this challenge in KQ, which I could easily call the low-hanging fruits, but which has really been a major pain in KQ, the industrial relations. We need to have ownership of the entire management and staff of KQ to understand the challenge and that we need to get out of it. Because somebody else cannot be paying for our lunch, and we just have the lunch. Those are some of the quick wins. Some of the more difficult things which I think have been addressed are those expensive leases, on the 7-7 leases, where the costs and the revenues are really challenged. And again, we are having to rely on government to pay on behalf. But as it were, KQ, like we'll all have to agree, from an aviation perspective, is a very strategic asset. So it will be one thing to sit down and first things first. What are the low-hanging fruits? What do we need to address? And what kind of ownership? So it's a leadership issue. We really need to address that. One thing which I'm going to put alongside KQ, G2G, and Adani, and I did prepare the challenge that the country faced in the last 4 weeks in terms of how we work, is the aspect of communication and carrying the Kenyans together with us. Article 35 of the Constitution, and I did make a record of that so that I don't fumble around, where every citizen has the right to information. And in Article 69, it talks to public participation in the environment. In 118, it talks to public participation in facilitating public participation in involvement and in the legislative process, public participation in the National Assembly and in the county government in Article 196. And in the finance area, Chapter 12, it talks about there shall be openness and accountability, including participation in financial matters. Chair, I think as government, we feel like information can only be given out when we have been pushed to give information. The public participation is articulated in the Constitution and in the act that has been in Parliament to basically actualize how public participation should be conducted, and which is causing a pain today, including the ruling that we just had the previous day, is something that we need to carry Kenyans as we do some of the things we do, like in Adani, in Kenya Airways, or in G2G. Because G2G was a fairly complex and a quick solution required to address the challenge of the time. But we're trying to explain today, even to members of Parliament, to understand something that was built over a period of 4 months. If we carried everybody along in public participation so that they understand every step as we go forward, we wouldn't be facing the kind of challenges we are facing today. So there'll be need to inculcate public participation from inception as we carry the programs forward, so that we are together with Kenyans at every stage. Of course, how that is done is something that we'll need to really work on. So really, I think we really need to address the challenge that we find ourselves doing what we believe is right for the country, but the population do not quite understand because we did not carry them along the whole journey. The G2G story, Honorable Kimani Chungwa, through the chair, I think was a great success for this country. At a time when we came out of COVID, at a time when the Ukraine war was a big challenge, and the inflation rate was soaring at a high of 9%, including in the US and Canada. A very tight monetary policy running even today at 5.25% to 5.5%. And the dollars would rather be in soft trading as opposed to trading with risk. Everybody was basically earning more money, taking their money to the bank. And a situation which did not only affect Kenya, in fact, in the tea industry, we were not selling our tea because there was no dollars out there. It was a global crisis. Let me then answer the point.
Avoid the temptation to give a lecture.
Yeah.
Answer questions.
Agreed. Yes. The G2G chair was brought in to forestall the challenge of unavailability of the US dollars in the industry. And we did build a very quick solution to ensure that the country would not run dry. We could be able to purchase petroleum, pay Kenya shillings, on a deferred LCs, which would be confirmed by international AAA or what you would call investment grade banks, over the local issued LCs and be able to get the product and pay later when the situation improves. It has worked very well. I think we have today brought in over 100 cargoes. We have in-account dollars in excess of $3 billion over this. And I think today, if not for G2G, like when we went to elections, Chair, in March, April, May 2022, MPs will recall carrying jerry cans around the country looking for fuel to run their campaigns because there were no dollars to buy petroleum products. As regarding Adani, so G2G was great. I think it is something, Chair, when there is time and I write my book, it will be one of my legacy delivery to this country. Adani.
You know, you're being guided by the chair to avoid giving lectures, because the straight answer was the dollar was at 160 something. And part of the benefits of that is
at 130 today. Thank you.
130 today.
Thank you.
Fuel prices, the prices they were trading at then and what they would have gone
With respect to Adani, Chair, we look at Adani. We'll need, like I opened by saying, public participation, provide information, have a framework in terms of what you would call term sheet, in terms of what is the correct return on investment when we are bringing a PPP. If we agree that the return on investment is 12 to 15% internal rate of return, if we agree on the debt equity ratio, we should be able to really get Kenyans to understand, get everyone to understand, is Adani a deal we should do? Is it going to help Kenya? Vis-a-vis what I just said, this is an off-balance sheet upgrade of Kenya Airports Authority. If we can't do it as a government, can we allow a private sector player to do it on reasonable but competitive cost or return on capital? Thank you, Chair.
Ned.
Thank you, Chairman and Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by saying that and telling the nominee that I think, Mr. Nominee, the issue now that at hand that you need to explain to the vetting committee is that you are getting into a ministry that has a very high, huge pending bill that has no money essentially for development of new roads. You need to tell us how you are going to turn around that. What vision, what do you think you will do that will turn around that? That's number one. And number two, in November 2023, no, I mean in 25th of August 2023, during your tenure as Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum, the country experienced a national grid failure, you remember? And it affected many places, including the airport, including homes, hospitals, everywhere. And the then Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport took some decisions and reshuffled people at the airport and sacked some people. But on your side, nothing happened. What could be the reason, and what could have caused the disruption, or what could have caused the grid to collapse? And another thing I wanted to ask you is, you know, we have formed a new cabinet. We are vetting 22 members of parliament, members of the cabinet. And this is a broad-based government, as has been said by the President himself. But the effect of broad-based also is to have development in every part of the country. This country has suffered enough in the sense that there's skewed way of doing road constructions in the country. There are places like my neighbor here in Kikuyu, there is no road remaining, unless now we want to put overhead and overpasses and underground passes. And there are places where still there are issues of roads. What criteria will you come up with?
Honorable Speaker, you need to protect me from my colleague. He can't say there are no roads remaining in Kikuyu when there are actually no roads in Kikuyu.
You'll be protected.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ask your question.
Mr. Speaker, so I was asking, what criteria are you going to come up with so that roads net distribution is done in an equitable and fair manner? Lastly, there was a road that was supposed to be dualed from, I don't know, here, Kabete or somewhere in Nairobi here, all the way to Rironi. all the way to Mount Summit Junction. And that is where, as we go, every weekend, what is the status? There was an agreement with the French government, but it has never taken off. So, Mr. Nominee, those 4 issues, if you explain,
Yes, Davis.
then you may get a good report from me.
Very quickly, for the unfortunate blackouts in the network, Chair, I do note we have had a number of blackouts which we have addressed and categorized into quick solution in short term, mid term, and long term. Whereas we have generated enough power because it is done by the private sector or off-government balance sheet. And the energy sector is totally unbundled in terms of generators, transmission, and offtake, or what you call the buyer market in KPLC. The transmission network is financed by the exchequer, through the exchequer. And with the inadequate financing of the transmission network, most of the challenges that we saw in the blackout was transmission in nature. Chair, we have 2 very specific challenges in Kisumu, Moroni, Chemosit, a network which links to Bomet through Kigati to Awendo, Homa Bay and Awendo. And that transmission network gets overloaded. When a system is overloaded, it drips to secure itself, just like the circuit breakers in our house. When it sends a fault, it will drip. So the drip, due to an overload, became a challenge. We have since secured funding to get an alternative routing to get more power from Olkaria through Narok, Bomet, Awendo, and Homa Bay. So that the contractor will be on site shortly. We got a funding from Africa Development Bank and address that challenge. The other challenge that has been dripping the country, and where we occasionally, for those of us who live in that region, do pull out feeders. Pulling out a feeder is load shedding. And so a few areas would be load shedding to ensure that it doesn't drip the whole country while we build this network very quickly. We've had a challenge in Takwel, a place called Ortum, Kitale, where we did put some 3 solar plants called Alten, Selenkei, and what happened is those solar plants caused a network constraint. And so we've not been dispatching Takwel because of the take-or-pay challenge of delivery of power into the system. Chair, that has since been resolved. We have gotten the transformers into Otum. Otum is in some place in West Pokot there, and we've gotten the transformer to Kitale. And the network constraint, or the congestion of having to transmit more power through a line, has been resolved. We are also working on something called to be able to manage voltage stabilization. We are working on STATCOMs on the Ethiopia-Kenya line to be able to address the voltages so that we do not have this intermittence and a network disturbance which causes a blackout. And so those are being addressed. Unfortunately, they belong to Ketraco, where they are addressed through the balance sheet, but that is being addressed, Chair. With regard to...
Point of order, Chairman.
Yes, Mary.
I have not heard him mention Busia and Kakamega, because blackouts cut across. Actually, you cannot even put a business in Busia, because you persistent blackout. So mention something about Busia and Kakamega and Bungoma. Yeah.
Allow me, Chair.
Yes, Chirchir.
Chair, I should have possibly said west of Kenya.
Call me Speaker or Chairman, not
Chairman,
Chair.
Chairman, yes. This challenge is really characteristic of most of west of Kenya. You know, most of the generation is in the Seven Forks.
It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But with the construction of the line to carry power from Olkaria direct to west of Kenya, a very good capacity line, that problem will be a thing of the past. That's being
when
done.
will it be ready?
Another 18 months, but what we are currently doing, we have got mitigation. We've built a line from Sondu through Awendo to be able to deload Chemosit, Kigati. So there's a lot of work being done. And let me say this, Chair.
He's sitting on a chair.
I'm sitting on a chair. I'm not a chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Let me say this.
Yes.
Since I came to the Ministry of Energy and petroleum. We've been working on the critical projects which had been started rather than the appetite of starting new projects. These have been historical challenges. We are sorting them. Whoever comes, my colleague who comes to the office, there are ongoing projects as we speak today. We are accelerating them because of that challenge. In fact, to put lives to the number of load shedding, occasionally on a day-to-day basis, we are load shedding up to 140 customers to be able to remove the overload on the line. So conscious of that, including hospitals, including industries, factories, the tea factories. Conscious of that, Chair, we are working around the clock to ensure that we deliver this in the shortest possible time.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I'm not asking a question, but Mr. Speaker, looking at the time, only 3 people have asked questions, and we're almost an hour. So if the nominee, please, could just be short and precise.
Going forward, nominee, when you ask a question, just answer it. Are you selling Kenya Airways? No. Are you pumping in more money? Yes or no. Then we make progress. Let me now start from this side.
Why don't I finish Junet? And I'll just, 30 seconds. Rironi Molo was concession to the French company. I think the pricing, again, is what I called a term sheet. We'll relook at that and be able to bring the cost right, possibly do what we must do to deload or decongest that road. It's a matter of priority to be able to move traffic to west of Kenya. The road construction, what criteria will we use? Chairman, I introduced my formative life in traffic engineering, and we'll need to do more of really ensuring we look at traffic, we look at opening new areas for economic purposes. Think about the Lapset. It is a new development corridor. You may not need traffic to open Lapset because we need to shift development to a new development corridor. And so we'll use all those kind of clustered frameworks to be able to open this country, working with the members of parliament, like I've worked with most of you on the last mile, to be able to open this country. Thank you.
Good. Let me start from Robert. Then we go to Mary, Amisi, Mule, then we come back this side.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And please ask one question each. Don't make no preamble to your questions.
Speaker, there are very critical things I needed to know from the nominee. So first and foremost, the road maintenance levy that was introduced recently from 18 shillings to 25 shillings by EPRA was done, in my opinion, without reference to the National Assembly. And despite also the fact that Kenyans, when there was public participation, they said no. I would like to hear your opinion about that. And there's some clarity on the G2G deal. Why was National Oil Corporation of Kenya involved? Because there is a belief that it wasn't. And then on the same deal, when you say that you're paying for fuel in Kenyan shillings, I want clarity because I am very well aware that Kenyan shillings are not legal tender outside this country, outside the region. So how is it that you are able to pay for, because that has always been the comment, that we are paying for fuel in Kenyan shillings. How would UAE or other countries out there receive Kenyan shillings as legal tender? And finally, on the transport sector, which you're being dominated to, how will you deal with the 3 critical things? 1, road safety. 2, the menace of traffic police on the roads, and finally, of course, the high cost of transportation. Thank you, Chairman.
Swali moja.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I would like to ask Davis, our nominee, this one question. The north of Kenya, that is Malindi, Tana River, Lamu, those areas are very productive, but the productivity has been hindered because of the lack of the airport in Malindi, a good airport. This has been a question that every government has not wanted to face, that we must, Malindi is decaying because of the lack of the airport. Over $100 billion investments in Malindi, they are coming down because of the lack of the airport. You're a clever man, that I know because I've worked with you before. and I want to declare my interest. What will you do really to solve this problem of the airport? Secondly, the open sky question. We are protective of KQ, yes. But again, we also need to open this country to more investment by allowing other airlines to come in. If Ethiopian Airline can fly to tourists from Addis Ababa to Nairobi, then the tourist is stranded there waiting for Jumbo Jet to fly to Malindi at 7 in the evening, and they arrived at 7 in the morning. Why would you do that and kill tourism just because we want to protect KQ? What will you do to solve these two key legendary issues, the Malindi Airport and the open sky policy in this country? Thank you.
Answer those three questions, two from Robert, one from...
Chairman, the issue of road maintenance levy, which granted has done very well, because you will notice that our highways are very well maintained, is a good thing in terms of the ratio that I've seen on how it gets to Kena, Kura for the urban, and Kera. And we'll need to look at whether we need to redimension and get some savings. Are we over-providing? Are those percentage distribution frameworks supporting? Because whereas the road development does not have any revenue because we rely on the exchequer support, can we be able to, in line with what I said earlier, having to get more of off-balance sheet road development in an area where we'll be together looking at a policy on tolling, road tolling, so that you pay as you use. You see the expressway is fairly popular, and yet people are willing to pay today rather than really pay when they are not using. So we look at that together, honorable members. Ongoing, we will really, because of the 7 shillings additional, that was, like you said, hurriedly, without coming to the House, we'll need to look at that together. I think it's topical. I don't know whether it is in court as we speak. But it's an area where if we socialize Kenyans, like I said, from the word go, and understood the need to be able to open up this country for economic development, it's one thing that could help us in working on securitization and really coming into your constituency in Eastern Province and opening up that region for development. So we look at that together because it's a very topical issue as we speak today. NOC wasn't considered because NOC was not able to play in this space. The space belonged to the international oil marketing companies who are able to work with AAA or investment grade banks to be able to give us products on deferred LCs for 6 months. At the time when we did this, NOC has been having a very big challenge, and in fact we are commercializing. Chair, it's when you really try to really pick up what you cannot manage. So the international oil marketing companies were allowed to appoint local OMCs companies who had relationship or accounts with them to be able to offtake the products in Kenya, because the trade finance is a bit of a complex area, because this is really employing trade finance to be able to take products today and pay 6 months later. Pay in Kenya shillings today. In the meantime, because the dollar accumulation was very tight, buy the dollars in a structured form where KCB, Standard Chartered are the only people going to the market through central bank, with in a very structured way. We had a committee called TRIMCOM, Treasury Risk Investment and Management Committee, which meets every Wednesday. And therefore, we had a very structured way of taking the shillings and going to the market from the 120th day to buy in a structured way, so that we also removed the interbank rate, which had gone off completely. So NOC was not included. They could not play in this space. Regarding the final question from...
Speaker.
Malindi Airport.
Malindi Airport.
How did the cargo disappear? That is the question. The dollar. That's what he's asking, the chairman.
Let me mention that. Let me come to that. The traffic, the road safety, traffic issues, and high cost of transportation is something with the technology today. Let me just say, I'm aware that technology is being employed to be able to have an intelligent system with cameras on the road, with an electronic wallet that gives you points for good driving, removes points, and be able to eventually even cancel, with a kind of fine system that can be operated in this electronic space, we should be able to address. I know there is a project which is already going on. We'll need to review that and confirm. There is an ITS, Intelligent Traffic Management System, which is going to be addressing offenders at junctions and things like that. We'll look at that together and implement that quickly. Road transportation or transportation then becomes expensive because of the challenges inherent from the cost of fuel, the cost of congestion, and then so on and so forth. Traffic management becomes very important today, where even with Google Maps, you are able to choose the route without traffic. There is no reason why when I'm coming from Bomet, Honorable Speaker, I have to drive into a dead traffic end and slip over in my Mayu escarpment, when I could have actually, because of traffic management technology, just go out through Naivasha and get to Nairobi in 2 hours, and instead end up sleeping in the escarpment, and yet the technology is there today. So we'll implement those aspects of traffic management together. Malindi, Mheshimiwa Owen, I know Malindi is passionate. It's a tourist destination. We'll need to sit down and work together and see, like, from a traffic perspective, tourists would rather be flying than going on that narrow road into Malindi. And there is no reason why we cannot sit together quickly and dimension upgrade of Malindi and be able to attract more traffic. But more importantly, look at how commercial that should be, so that we do not get into the kind of bending bills that we talk about. Open sky question vis-a-vis the reciprocal requirement as per regulations is something we need to look at together. I do agree with you, but it's happening. It's bound to be happening at a very hard time for KQ when they are struggling. So let's see, do we push KQ to improve as we open our skies with those reciprocal arrangements? Because even if we did a reciprocal arrangement and our flights to those destinations are the Embraer, which are not able, they don't have the belly staff to carry enough luggage. So we really need to work very quickly to see whether we need KQ to come up, and I think we do, and be able to work on the open sky policy with, more importantly, the reciprocal arrangements. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Honour Davis, you've told us about your attempts to equalize provision of electricity in the country, and especially through the last mile. That's only 2 years, so it stands to be seen whether really there is anything feasible in that area. But now you go to roads. And as stated, there is great inequality in terms of road network in the country, and especially with what are known as stored projects, the stored roads. If I give you an example of Tharaka Nithi County, we have 3 roads started 10 years ago in 2014, and up to now we are still grappling with their completion. Will it be your policy that you will actually dedicate resources as a matter of urgency to completion of stored roads and projects, so that at least the network can to some extent be equalized?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Abdul Rahim Daud, MP for Northern, and I want to say I'm in the Committee of Transport, so I won't ask him transport questions. CS nominee, while you were in the energy sector, energy ministry, did you look at the fuel, the one we were told by Honorable Kiraito during his time as minister, that we had oil in Turkana? And if you did, why aren't we utilizing the refinery we had in Mombasa, so that at least fuel could be cheaper than what it is right now? Because we are at the mercy of the big oil operators. Lastly, regarding, I don't know if I will ask, roads, they are the Mau Mau roads, you have heard of them. But those Mau Mau roads do not pass through the whole of central Kenya. It is just a portion of central Kenya. Will you think of extending it to the other part, Mount Kenya East as well, because we do not have the Mau Mau roads. And we had Mau Mau even in Meru, Tharaka-Nithi, and Embu. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with George Murungaru regarding the note in Menti and the concern of stalled projects in Tharaka-Nithi. We do not have an option. We don't have an option. We've signed contracts. The interest will be piling. The bending bills will be piling. Unless we have a way of exiting, which I think they were considered before they were contracted, we'll have to look for funding solutions. And Chair, like I said, like the G2G, we have to think out of the box. Chairman. Regarding, so we don't have an option. We have to work on those roads.
Chirchir, what these members are asking you is, assuming you get favor from this committee and you are recommended to be appointed to that ministry, what plans do you have to tackle pending bills other than complain about pending bills? I think that is what members want you to tell us. What innovative ideas do you have when you get into office, if you get there, to get pending bills out of the way and start embarking on new projects or stalled projects?
Let me, it's a very tall order, and very fluid. Like David Kosing did raise, we need to look at securitization of the little revenues that we have in the road maintenance levy. Number two, why I said it's very fluid, depending on whether we are able to pull through the debate of the additional, that could be a very good area to fully securitize. If we securitize 7 shillings, and which works to 31 billion annually, and if you were to securitize that for like 10 years, that would be 310 billion. We can do a bullet payment on a pricing of 300 against maybe 250 billion because of the cost of money, and be able to address that challenge today. But again, like I said, it is fluid. We need to sit down together and look at the options. There'll be a number of options that we can look at together. Absolutely. As regarding Rahim's question on electricity, you do know that I had, when sitting in the Ministry of Energy chair, I sat with the county leadership from the various county in many breakfast meetings, and Rahim happened to have been in the breakfast meeting for. Chair will need to look at how to harmonize the redistribution of resources to address opening. I did write to every member of parliament in May last year, Chair, to look at how many primary schools or public institutions were not electrified in each constituency. With that database, we've been able to allocate money subject to meeting the social obligation of public institutions, so that if you are 100% electrified, Chair, why wouldn't we give more money to Rahim or to George in Tharaka-Nithi to be able to equalize and bring the whole country into an equal footing in terms of electricity or energy for all? We'll do similar frameworks in roads. We'll sit down together and map what we need to do to be able to really push the country forward. As regarding exploration of tallow and the discovery of oil in Kenya, we are at a phase called Field Development Plan. We have a big field development plan that should be coming to Parliament. It is being reviewed by the regulator. Once the regulator reviews, it will go to the minister, and within 30 days, the minister will bring it to Parliament. And what the field development plan does, Mr. Speaker, Chairman, is it looks at moving the concessionaire from exploration to production in line with the production sharing contract. It looks at the financial ability for them to build the system to produce the crude oil. It looks at the technical capacity of that farm. So currently we are reviewing the field development plan, and it will be coming to Parliament in due course to see whether we can move from exploration to production, because there is the risk of if not properly done, moving the concessionaire and staying in production for the next 10 years. So we are looking at the financial and technical capacity to be able to do that. Refinery becomes an option in terms of bankability of the project as to whether we export crude through a pipeline out of Lamu or Mombasa, or whether we refine. And therefore, that could help us to utilize the refinery in Mombasa that we closed some times back. Mau Mau roads, we can look at that together, Chairman. It is too early, but suddenly we will work to be able to dimension what we need to do together. Thank you.
Mary?
Thank you, Chairman. Nominee, in the collapsed finance bill, there was an allocation of 50 million for electricity distribution, 50 million for each constituency. I'm wondering whether you're going to carry that approach along with you to the Ministry of Transport, so that we have that equitable distribution of resources, so that if you decide it is 50 kilometers per county, we all benefit from 50 kilometers per county, so that regions like Busia can also get a road, a tarmac road, from Butula all the way to Amukura and Teso South, and other counties. Secondly, Nairobi Expressway was constructed to ease congestion along the highway. But sometime in January, the toll charges were increased. This defeats the purpose for which it was intended. Because now how do you reap from, how do you encourage people to use the highway and also benefit from economies of scale? What are your thoughts on the kind of charges that are being levied on the expressway? Thank you.
Amisi?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You asked for one question, but I beg you, give me two, because the last one is important for me. The first,
start with the important one.
The very, very important one, Mr. Speaker, is that I come from a constituency that do not have even a single kilometer of road of bitumen standard, and it has been like that since time immemorial. Mostly they say because it has been represented by opposition leaders, but I doubt. 20 months ago, we were here with the predecessor of this ministry. And I did ask him the same question, and he said that in 100 days, I will see miracles. Now it's 20 months down the line. I want to ask you, when do I expect to see at least a kilometer of bitumen standard in my constituency? And it's not just my constituency, Mr. Speaker. It is a program that needs to check that there is equal distribution of road network across the country, irrespective of where the region falls, whether it's in opposition or in the government. But there must be a clear national rationalization program of all constituencies, so that if a kilometer is built in Mombasa, there is another kilometer built in Kitale. We must have that, so that the constituents don't think that it is a failure of a member of parliament, when it is actually the failure of proper program of the ministry. And then the question I wanted to ask, Mr. Speaker, is that our roads and infrastructure are majorly World Bank funded, and IMF, International Monetary Fund. Mr. Speaker, World Bank were financial institutions that started to reconstruct Europe after the war on Europe, after the World War II. There were proper development in Europe before. The purpose of World Bank was to reconstruct Europe after the World War II, including Japan and other Asian countries. Now, it is 80 years since the World War II ended. We are still reconstructing. The purpose of that World Bank is not commensurate to the issues of the global South. In this country, we've never had war, whether it's local, global, even the Mau Mau did not destroy any road. We cannot talk about a fund that used to reconstruct, coming to develop an underdevelopment. So, Minister, you are going to a ministry that is heavily, we know the roads network is capital intensive, but you are going to a ministry that is going to be heavily dependent on the Bretton Woods institutions. whose purpose of establishment is completely different for a developmental path of our country. Do you have any policies of change that will ensure that this country does not continuously depend on external funding loans that are crippling our economy, loans that we are continuously at the yoke of external loans? Which policies are you going to depend on them? World Bank, number one, and the IMF, or you are going to change? And in which way are you going to change?
Yes, nominee.
Let me start with Honorable Mary Emase's question on, yes, if we make it brief, let me just answer yes, we'll do some equitable distribution of resources. Mary,
that's good enough.
We'll do that.
Yes.
And I think that really answers Kalip Hamisi's question, Honorable Kalip, for Saboti. The Bank of Reconstruction being what it is today. The
point of order, Mr. Speaker. That's how I was answered by the predecessor. I don't want to fall into the same. I just ask, do you have any rationalization program that will ensure not just Saboti, that every part of this country has an equal distribution of ready network, so that Saboti will also benefit?
Thank you, Chair. I was not going to make the 30 days promise to Mheshimiwa, but I was certainly going to, like I said, in respect to the answer to Mary Emase Mheshimiwa, that we'll try to work together to see equitable distribution of resources, look at how to open up this country economically because of ensuring that we need to get the products to market. But more importantly, like I said earlier, what are the alternative funding options? I did make my opening remarks that we are doing our best in energy to get power to get into every corner of this country. And we are using a lot of off-balance sheet we are not getting money from the National Treasury. So to the extent that we today are having an unfunded commitment of about $1 billion, we'll need to sit together to be able to look at the resources that come out of Treasury. Are we going to get it to the Ministry of Roads or State Department of Roads as printed estimates, or are we going to work together to equitably ensure that those printed estimates do cover every part of the country? Mheshimiwa Hamisi, I will really want to be a player in sitting down with all the honorable members to ensure equitable distribution. And like you said, what are the options of funding roads? We'll look at that together, more importantly, to ensure that we don't over-rely on the Bank of Reconstruction after the World War. We do have other options.
Mukami.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. There is a...
Chairman.
Okay.
Chairman.
Okay.
Honorable Speaker, a point of information.
Yes,
Honorable Speaker, allow me to solve this issue of chair and the chairman. And if you go to the dictionary, it actually says that one, as a noun, a separate seat for one person. Secondly, as a verb, a person in charge of a meeting.
That I am not a chair. Go on, Mukami.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
Honorable Waziri, there is a concern from the local contractors. They have raised concern about being overlooked in the awarding of contracts in the roads and transport sector, with the preference often shown for foreign contractors. This trade results in the repatriation of earnings. That means those contractors, the foreign contractors we are giving business here, they are not banking that money here in this country. What specific measures would you introduce to encourage the participation of local contractors and ensure they have a fair chance in the contract award process? Additionally, how will these measures help retain money within the country to boost our economy? Thank you.
Nishi, be like your neighbor, one question.
Chairman, I have two questions. One is a very short one because it is an ongoing problem which I've just witnessed in my constituency and other constituencies.
But Chairman, I don't think it's fair. When you say one question, other people are asking two questions.
I'm going to stop her after one.
Thank you, Chairman. I've seen my colleague here, they have asked two questions. Dawood, Emase, Amisi, yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, my first question on the LAPSET project. This project has been a milestone from the last regime and even the current regime. And to me, this is a project where can be a game changer in terms of our economy, be it locally or internationally. Billions of shillings have been consumed, be it for compensation and even building of the port. Currently, what is the status in terms of operationalization in the LAPSET corridor? Two, what unique approaches are you going to do to ensure that we fully realize operationalization of this port of Lamu? My second question, on the same breath, do you have any specific programs you intend to employ to ensure that you create employment to our youth? Because this has been a thorn issue. In fact, even His Excellency the President has been talking about it, that we need to have a national conversation and we address the issue of unemployment, especially to our youth. Lastly, but not least, it is on the issue of duplication of roadworks among three entities: the county government, the Kura, and Kera. In most of cases, there are scenarios whereby a road has been built by the county government, Kura is doing some repair and maintenance, Kera is also doing some repair and maintenance, and you don't know which fund it's been lost just in the middle of that. So we need to have classification, a proper classification of roads, so that we know this road belongs to county government and these other roads belong to, they're under the entity of Kera, Kura, and Kenha. There is a lot of duplication, especially Kura and county government. For Kena, I think it's okay. For Kera, it's somewhat okay. But Kura and county government. Thank you.
Nominee, you know you are not a minister for roads yet, so you are only giving your futuristic plans if you get there.
Thank you again, Honorable Speaker, Chairman. The question from Mukami regarding LAPSET and the equal opportunities for employment of the youth. You know, Chair, we've done something. Chairman, we've done something in the procurement where we did deliberate policy to be able to allow the youth and women PWDs at 30%. It's a question of implementation, but we need to have a deliberate policy to ensure that our local companies are really having a stake in building over roads. We'll need to work together to look at that policy to ensure that there is a fair way of ensuring that we are able to build our companies so that in the years to come, we should be like other countries where we are even exporting contractors to other destinations to build infrastructure. Regarding employment for the youth, I think it's an important area where if we don't address the question of the youth, it's a time bomb waiting to happen, and it's already happening. So we need to work very closely together to ensure that we do have the kind of initiatives that we have seen before, where we had, for example, Kasi Mitani, deliberate policy for the foreign contractors. When they come in, they are not the ones operating those machines, because just to say, Chairman, in Kenyan or GDC, we do the drilling of those steam wells. We build power plants with Kenyans. It cannot be that when contractors come to build our roads, even the operators are of foreign whatever, to be able to employ our youths. We need to address that. So we need a deliberate policy to ensure that we are able to employ our youths. The opening up of the infrastructure in the SEZs, which is one area where we need to work very quickly. We are opening Dongokundu. It's a lot of work from roads and transport. We are going to be opening all those, as he said, we need to deliberately work quickly in those various areas, including the Lapset corridor, just to marry the question of Mukami and Mishimbogo, that Lapset is a new development corridor, just like Mombasa all the way to Kisumu. The developments are about 50 kilometers on either side of the road. When we really move quickly, it's in the interest of the country to open that corridor to support South Sudan, to support Ethiopia, to support our oil exports, to support what we need to do to open a new development corridor and possibly reduce the cost of land around the 50 kilometers on either side of the northern corridor that is currently so congested. So the question of youth is a central aspect in really ensuring what the economic advisors have basically said. Can we do more of capital-intensive investment, or do we do more of what would be labor-intensive investments? It's a question of how do we employ our capital? Do we employ capital to create jobs, or do we employ capital to get big returns? Because the owners of capital basically just want to get return and they don't care about creating jobs for our youth. So we look at those policies, Mheshimiwa, to ensure that we do really address the challenge of the youth. Lamu would certainly be a new city as soon as we open Lapset because of that destination in terms of the port and the challenge that we have today. We have 3 ports which have been built. So much money sunk there. We need that port to be functioning. I know we only used it the other day to ship the fertilizer. We have used it again to ship the cattle to the Middle East. We need to quickly work together to see how that port can return on the investment that has been put on that. Kura, Kera, and Kena is something we look at together. Are there duplication of roles? I think in the 47 parastatals that was supposed to be, we are seriously going to be looking, once confirmed, at where there are duplication, we can be able to hem in and cut costs. Thank you, Chairman.
Chirchir. Yes, Mukami.
Chairman.
Yes.
Waziri, you've not answered the measures you are going to take to make sure that the foreign contractors, they are going to retain the money in our country instead of taking their money in their country. Thank you. Out of the country.
Hold that. Sharia.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Speaker. Nominee Waziri Chirchir. My question is on what informs road agents, especially Kura and Kenha. I ask this with the knowledge that damaged roads in NEP counties in recent floods were unattended for months, hindering mobility of people and critical goods and services, while in other parts restoration was immediate. If approved, would you be able to do the same? God forbid, we don't want it to flood again and get our roads damaged, but what would you do differently to attend to them emergencies? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very good. You should all be like Chirchir. Yes, Razo.
Chirchir. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Chirchir, I think listening to you, personally, I feel that Sessional Paper number 10 of 1965 is alive and it is likely to be refined. Why am I saying this? There are constituencies without a kilometer of tarmac road in Kenya. While when we drive around, there are constituencies with almost 70–80% of very well paved network. Electricity penetration. I think at least majority of the constituencies could be at 30–40%, which is really a plus. So I think you have a big task ahead of you if the House is going to approve your nomination, because road network is everything. It opens up the country. It opens a lot to contribute to the economy of this nation. I have two questions. One is on the issue of, yes, I'll ask one question. It is the issue of corruption, particularly in the road sector and also in energy, where the same group of people are the ones who are contractors in one project after the other. If they are not there, the project is not there. So how are you going to deal with that? The other issue is the issue of many towns in the ASAL are still operating on generators. They are not connected to the national grid. It is both expensive and it is also environmentally not friendly because of pollution. Maybe you can say something about that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Capital flight, how are we going to address the challenge of capital flight? I think there are two forms on how we can manage this. One, localize a lot of the employment so that the labor is not foreign, where we have capacity, and as regarding really ensuring that the capital expenditure for the construction materials go to construction, it shouldn't be really that the Kenyan policy will not allow foreign investors to repatriate profit, but to the extent that the employment, the workforce is foreign, that is an area we can work on immediately to ensure that we do retain that and use to spur the economic growth in terms of circulation of that money. Surya Abdi, I think really we're going to sit down and work together as to whether we want printed estimates to come from Parliament so that we are just the implementers because we have shared equitably from the House, or whether you want to allow opening of those areas like Lapset, for example, is a good example. Let me use this, Honorable Speaker, to explain that we need to open a new corridor. We need to open that great fertile area of
You've said that 5 times.
And therefore there is need to take infrastructure to open Kenya. Russell, Saku, you do know that we are moving from Loengalani. There is funding. The project is close to Marsabit. Saku is basically Marsabit, and we are moving to Moyale, coming down to where? To Isiolo. And what we're going to do, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think you have said the issue of Moyale and Marsabit. But the issue is, why does it take some things to be done faster in some other parts of the country, but for us we wait as long as until the cows come home? Is it that we are in the same country or we are in different country, and what applies in one part does not apply to us? In fact, that is why I'm saying sessional paper number 10 of 1965 is alive and it is kicking very hard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair,
you are not born when it was written, were you?
I don't know whether we should invert the sessional paper and ensure that Lapset will do it. I've just used Lapset as an example to say we need to open up the unopen areas of Kenya and ensure that we do develop, ensure that we do have electricity, we do have roads, we do have water to be able to move out of the congested development corridor. It's more of a development corridor. I don't think we are going there because of the services. We just want to make the land useful, ensure that we move the population out to those areas. I just did mention in passing, as an example, Lengalani, Marsabit, and Moyale, which is on project ongoing, and we are going to make sure that we do have step down and feeders to support the people in those communities. LAPSET, I think we've talked so much about LAPSET. What are we going to do about corruption in roads so that the same contractors are not the same people just winning the tenders all the time? I think it is basically fidelity to the law. There is a procurement process. I go to the ministry, and I'm going to ensure that we do streamline whatever is not right. We do things according to the rules of the game and ensure that we do build capacity. When I reviewed the functions as per the order of what functions do sit in roads, I do see the mechanical transport fund. I do see all those services where we do have the registration of technologists and engineers, and we can really improve capacity of our own local people. There is no reason why today, 60 years after independence, we are not competing with those multinational contractors, to the extent that it's not an EXIM funding, and it's an export credit chairman where they are following their contractors are coming to spend their money. All the local contracts which are funded through the exchequer, there is no reason why we don't have capacity.
A similar point, nominee, there's a Kenyan who sent me a message that locals cannot possibly compete with big Chinese contractors for the reason, when you give a Chinese contractor, I don't know if it is true, the government gives them free maram pits, free quarry pits. Sometimes you allow them to bring equipment duty-free. Yeah. They exempted from VAT. They bring cement from Indonesia and Malaysia, half the price of our cement. How do they compete with locals? Somebody has sent a message for me to ask you, if you get to the ministry, assuming you'll be approved, how will you correct this? Because you can't tie somebody's hands at the back and tell him to fight fairly with a person whose hands are free.
Chair, and that's when I said EXIM, you know, EXIM banks are export credit banks which are meant to support the investors or the contractors of a particular country to do business abroad. So that really we are competing with a competitor where the EXIM facility do give them that competitive advantage in terms of, because the purpose of an EXIM is to export services, to export capital, but follow and employ that capital using their own personnel. That's why when we get a facility from Japan, it's more of the Japanese who do the job. When we get a support from China, it's more of the Chinese who follow that money. We need to sit down together and look at how do we ensure then that the local contracts which are funded by the Kenya government are not exported to support the foreign capitals. So it's something that we must be deliberate. We must be deliberate about that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you very much, nominee. I've listened to you, but I just want to ask you more of a constitutional requirement. Kera, Kura, Kena came into play before the Constitution 2010. Then after Constitution 2010, we got the devolved governments, whereby the total confusion kicked in. As this House, if approves you, I want to hear what national are you going to use? Are you going to continue doing the same, or we are going to go back to the drawing board to establish a roads authority which caters for equal distribution of roads? Whereby, if you look at right now, Mr. Davis, after the current rains, even the existing roads have extremely been damaged. And I know very well,
You talk to Kera, you talk to Kura, you talk to county governments, you talk to Kenya, no budget to redo those roads. Not even, we are crying for new ones. The existing ones, which can spur this economy by transportation of goods, there is a problem. I want just to hear from you as the new CS once approved. What is your vision on this lacuna of the Constitution?
Go ahead, David.
Speaker, I think Stephen makes a profound point, because I look at Kenya Road Boards Act 1999, I look at Kenya 2007, I look at KERA 2007. So the legislation was done before the new constitution. We need in line to harmonize and ensure that the articles, or rather the law is in line with the constitution. But more importantly, Chair, again the same question from Mule, is that we raised about 70, last year or the current year, we raised 79.9 billion on the road maintenance levy. And we do see fairly well-maintained highway courtesy of this road maintenance levy. There should be no reason why the Kera portion or the Kura portion for the urban, as much as it is supporting the national highways to maintain good infrastructure, does not cover all the areas of Kenya equitably, to the extent that a road is classified, it belongs to that class. There is, again, reclassification is another thing we need to talk to. But certainly, with the funding in road maintenance, we'll need to sit down together and ensure that we are able to maintain all our roads. I think the support from the road maintenance levy, to me, seems to be fairly good. And to the extent that it seems to just be a distribution challenge, and we'll need to sit down and work together on that. Thank you.
Naisula.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to put it to the nominee that in case he's approved, the docket that he's going to, Kenyans perceive it to be very lucrative. I don't know why, but that is the feeling out there. And one thing is that Kenyans, we have an insatiable appetite for kickbacks, you know, in most of the things. And I'm aware that in the last regime, we lost Qatar making JKIA their hub to Rwanda. And most of the time, the people who come to our country wanting to invest here, they say it is because of kickbacks.
You're saying we lost it because of kickbacks?
I'm saying because Qatar. I'm saying because the allegations that mostly when investors want to come to Kenya, we ask them for crazy kickbacks. And people then leave the country, they go to countries like Ethiopia, to Rwanda, and if they invested here, I am reliably informed that they were going to do for us another, the second terminal. We would, you know, so instead of the kickback, we would have gotten investment. They would have helped us with infrastructure of even the existing one. I want to just ask.
Chair, on a point of order. No, we are also getting information that we didn't know. Honorable Lesuda said in the last regime, did she mean the outgoing cabinet secretary who the honorable...
No, the previous... That is not a regime.
I thought she meant the regime in the ministry.
No.
So is the outgoing, regime. The former regime?
Yes. I know where you're going with that. I am a very objective legislator. Yeah. And so allow me to ask this question. Where you were the chair budget. Anyway, let me carry on. And so, in case you find yourself in this office, and we have people, for example, like Emirates, we have people like Etihad, or others who would want to come with the same offer. to our country. I would like to get your view on what you think of such partnerships, which for me I think would be beneficial to our country. It is on the same thing that I've been pushing for the non-motorized transport, where we take care of our cyclists, where we take care of our pedestrians. We cannot be having roads for the minority who are driving, and then our people who are walking and cycling, who are the majority, are squeezed at the corner of the road, and we are killing them every other day, bicycles. But the argument is that the money is not enough for it, because we have enough money for kickbacks when you get a road, but you don't have money to do the footbridge and also to do the pedestrian. Lastly, is that I just want to pick your view on loans versus development. You know, we're asking for roads, and then where do we get it? You know, your view on whether, you know, we'll still have capacity to do loans. Mr. Speaker, allow me, this is a question from someone whom I think it's an important question, where someone is asking that I ask the nominee, in case you find yourself in the office and you find out that the start times, which monitors SGR in real time from it actually, and he's confirming that he has seen it, SGR monitors, start times monitoring SGR in real time from its headquarters in Beijing. When you visit Star Times headquarters in Beijing, there is a room with big screens mounted on the wall, monitoring every terminus of SGR in real time. Even if this infrastructure was funded by a loan from China, why should monitoring be done in Beijing?
I thank you, Speaker. I think mine will be in the form of a comment. And the nominee, I don't know whether you know the area you are going. The area you are going is a people's area, is MP's area. It's almost like a market, because roads touch on everybody in this country, and therefore it's a critical thing. So my only comment to you, nominee, hearing from a lot of members of parliament who told me to bring up this issue, is about your availability, about your accessibility. People cannot get you in your office. People cannot call you or receive their calls, particularly MPs. And therefore, I think you need, I don't know what you will tell this committee. If you are approved to become a CS, please go and work on that part of your skill so that you can be able to be accessible to as many leaders as possible. Thank you, Chair.
That comment, which I hope the nominee, if favored, will take into account. Gikaria, the last one.
Thank you, Chair. Chairman, sorry. Kenya is strategically located for purposes of, the landlocked countries, Uganda, Rwanda. Your predecessor, when he was here 20 months ago, there was this aspect of delay on the road by the way bridges, police roadblocks, the bumps on our road, and so many other issues that occurred to that. As you've said, told us about the transport management system, where as an individual using a personal car, I might divert and go, but trucks will not have that choice. They will just have to stick because there are those way bridges, and that delaying the traffic to our neighboring countries to a point that there was a time they were threatening to use other routes for them to be able to. In line of that, maybe what policy have you put in place even to address the first phase of addressing the great North Road, that we were going to have a dual carriage from Rironi all the way to Mau Summit, and then thereafter onwards all the way to Busia. So maybe, by that time, the minister had indicated that the dual carriage would be starting, I think, in a year ago, but it has not started. Secondly, the economic survey of 2024. In 2023,
The road carnage, accidents, 9,960 accidents, 4,324 lives lost, 10,762 serious injuries, 7,799 minor injuries. What policy are you going to bring in to address the road carnage and road accident in the country? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Davis?
Thank you, Speaker. Let me start with Naisola's lucrative nature. I think I did say, Chair, with the risk of repeating myself, that if you have a good framework, a good term sheet, which does stipulate the boundaries under which we are willing to allow investors to leverage and get reasonable return on their investment. And because the PPP Act of 2021 do allow competition even when it's a privately initiated project, if before the closure of the project, Qatar comes and puts in another privately initiated project, and if the rates are more competitive, it should be good for our economy. And therefore, it's just a question of what I earlier said, fidelity and leadership, fidelity to the law and leadership at the ministry, so that even as we run PPP, can we run PPP in a more competitive way and ensure that even as we seek these people to come in, because of the very tight headroom, that we are not able to develop some of these infrastructure facilities to grow our country, we do have a very clear return on investment that is allowable. In the energy sector, we only allow 12.5% for every power generator on internal rate of return on equity. We do not allow a share debt equity of more than 25/75 because debt is cheap. And we really should be able to work on an economic model. And if we get a second investor who is more competitive, because the PPP Act allows competition, we should be able to address that and ensure that we give the best for our country. In terms of, I don't know whether I'm too brief on that, but let me go to the non-motorized. Yes, we need to have pedestrian-friendly roads. When those of us who like running from the Rift even look for where to jog in the morning, we find that we are either running with the vehicles on the road, and therefore, Chairman, we can have more people even walking to work if we have got good pedestrian, really side walks, and even support the health for those of us who like to walk or run in the morning or in the evening. The loans versus development, there's a very interesting scenario I found while reviewing the notes on this loan versus development. When we borrow in the energy sector, we do subsidiary agreements to on-lend the loan to a place like Kengen, and therefore they repay the full loan. When we did a loan to the railways, they took the asset and left the liability at the treasury. And so these are some of the things we need to see whether we can really have our state agencies working more profitably, having the asset and having the liability, and not just having the asset, sweating the asset and making losses while the liability is being paid by the national treasury. It's a bit, some of the things we'll need to look at more critically. But more importantly, on the area of the railway, the ports, can we build synergy? Let me just give a very quick thoughts, which I look at the fact that they are all under the ministry. We get the port with its challenges of clearing the container. The container then moves to Mariakani to be loaded onto an SGR, which is under different management. It comes to ICD, which is a port facility. And whether it's going to ICD Nairobi or going to ICD Naivasha, it is changing hands, and the slag in those changeovers. And the fact that today, for what I've reviewed, the Kenya Railways is handling 10 to 20% of the cargoes. Does not add up. We need more synergy between Kenya Railways.
Is that a lamentation, or you are preparing to tell us what you will do?
I'm answering one of the questions which was asked in terms of how are we going to have a more seamless working together as a roads and transport ministry and being able to build synergy.
How will you do it if approved? That is the big question.
That is the answer, Chair. I'm saying we really will work to ensure that they work more closely together, and we should be able to grow the luggage coming out of the port to the railway and being able to make those kind of profits rather than transporting. Chair, let me use again an example and allow me to do this. Pipeline, which is a transport facility, when Uganda decided to borrow from Kenya the G2G, and Zambia is currently borrowing, we did not allow them to use the road. We said we've built a pipeline. We cannot be stressing our roads when there is a pipeline for transporting products. So my point is we really need to build synergy in the transport sector so that
an excellent idea.
We have an better interworking between Kenya Ports Authority, Kenya Railways, and the intermodal kind of traffic movement, where when you are in the UK, if you bought a train ticket, it is used on the bus and it is used on the taxi. There is no reason why we cannot quickly move to that. The next, which I want to answer very quickly, is the control center for our SGR, which is out there. There is no reason why we do not. We have a national control center for our electricity movement of electrons across the whole country. And when you sit in Dandora National Control Center, even some of the challenges and where the blackout is coming from is visible in one room like this. There is no reason why we cannot work together with our partners and ensure that that employment is shifted to Nairobi, and we can watch our SGR from Nairobi, from Mombasa, from Mariakani, or wherever the National Control Center will be. Because you make a very good point, and a bit of land.
Just a comment, don't belabor it.
I learned a bit in REREC that I also saw a few, so I'll operate a fairly good open door policy for the members of parliament. Gikaria, the landlocked, there is no reason why we cannot afford to play that game. Mombasa competition does not come from within. It comes from Dar, it comes from Djibouti. We need to be fast. Otherwise, we'll see our cargoes going to Dar, we'll see them going to Djibouti. They are trying to build the other port Tanga in up Dar es Salaam. So we need to be competitive. We cannot afford not to open the road quickly to ensure that the movement of the outbound goods do give competitive advantage to our neighbors, and that they don't have to go to competition outside Kenya, because that's how we lose jobs, that's how we lose opportunities. Economic survey for accidents, Chair, I'm aware that we really, in this day and age of technology, and like I said, when we have the electronic licenses and all the cameras that I'm told they are being installed in various points on the roads, we should be able to address this. Let me look at that and see how more in this day and age we can employ technology to reduce accidents, to revalidate the drivers, to have, I'm told, the inspection, the vehicle inspection center, we have got so many, only 2 are working. And we are still training our drivers on the traditional manual board. There is so much room for improvement. We cannot afford to be losing lives in this day and age through careless road accidents, which we can monitor and bring and reduce that mortality significantly. Thank you, Chairman.
The Rironi Mau Summit Road, do carriage?
I've also answered that, Chairman, because Rironi Mau Summit is one exit into.
That is the road that Junet asked.
Into Uganda?
And it was
absolutely.
Nominee, a few people have asked me to put the following to you. Tanzania is doing an electric SGR. If you are confirmed, will you speed up the extension of the SGR from where it is to Malaba, Kampala, arriving ahead of Tanzania so that you secure your cargo through Mombasa? Number 2, Kenyan from, I believe, Meru region. Will you consider upgrading the Nithi Kila Bridge so that you avoid accidents? Another one says, will you build toilets along highways to stop Kenyans from defecating in our trees and forests? Another one says, were you involved in the saga of the oil tanker concerning Jerry? Another one says, what affirmative action will you do for local contractors? And will you enforce the law on local content in contracts with foreigners?
Let me read another one from somebody who says, ask Honorable Chirchir whether there is any PPP deal that he signed in the Ministry of Energy, and if there is one, what are its terms?
I have one here too.
Yes, the last one.
Can you ask the cabinet nominee, David Chirchir, why there is huge cases of electricity brokers hacking smart meter codes in the country to destabilize the electric grid and to cut power bills?
Mr. Speaker, one person has sent me, Ministry of Transport gives PSC requirements for engineers, hence they only advertise engineers registered by EBK, and they don't include KETRAB, which is Kenya Technology Registration Board, who are graduates in Bachelor of Technology in Civil Engineering. What will he do about that?
Take 5 minutes to respond to those.
Chair, maybe he could also respond to one.
Yes.
The one for the toilets, I also got it. What he will do to deal with, he's asking, CS Chirchir. The first one was on Kera, on the stalled contracts that you answered. How is he going to avoid loss of public funds that is paid to contractors as interest accrued as a result of delayed payments of IPCs?
One more, Mr. Speaker.
This one of toilets is very serious.
This one says, as the CS, both LAPSET to Uhuru government have allocated 10 billion out of the 18 billion meant for Lamu Garissa section. The Kenya Kwanza government has so far allocated only 35 million for the last 3 financial years.
Right? We have one more nominee to come, and it's 5:45.
SGR, we have a development fund called Railway Development Fund, which collects about 36 billion annually. This is an area where we need to quickly look at how to secure that fund so that we don't use for some maintenance or some small developments, and therefore be able to, with 36 billion revenue, which by law is designated for development, we can borrow against it and be able to support the Naivasha, Kisumu, Malaba very quickly. And I'm aware that Uganda are trying to really work with us so that we can get more goods and even support the kind of cargo, the volume cargo, and make Kenya Railways more profitable. So that's an area which, like you said, with competition coming from outside Kenya, we need to quickly work on that, Speaker. Nithi Killer Bridge, I honestly thought it had been done, so it will be on the priority list. It cannot be called a killer bridge. It's not a good name. The toilets along the highway is very progressive. I don't think it's expensive to locate toilets in between towns. And like you said, it's something we can look at. It's not an expensive investment on our major highways. And therefore, you see the modern petrol stations in Total, Shell, Ruby's having very nice modern toilets. We can be able to support that investment and ensure that on our highways we do have very good facilities for people to. It could be nice in terms of even people stopping and stop driving under pressure and causing accidents. It could actually reduce accidents by certain levels. Njeri oil deal was disposed in court. It was a very interesting case of somebody making a claim on a cargo that left Saudi Aramco, and that went to court chair. We didn't. Nobody had involvement in Kenya. It was just some fraudster who wanted to be smart, because I think all the papers were just photocopied, and we did support the investigation and close the case, because it was really presenting a very bad picture under the G2G, and it was bound to interfere with the supply of oil products into Kenya if we didn't work hard together to close that issue. Affirmative action on our local contractors is something I've talked to. It is a very topical issue. It's something, it's coming from outside, it's coming from within here. We need to work on that and ensure that our local contractors are supported and there is no capital flight, because we should be employing our local Kenyans. The law on local content is something that really, with the clinker industry, really working on the kind of duties that we have levied on imported clinker. We should be able to use more of our cement. It is very popular. We are getting more of investment. Industry could easily be growing from 7% GDP to a higher number if we support the local content. It can support our industry and goes further to answering the question of employment of our Kenyans. PPP on energy signed. Let me say, PPP on energy, I would actually dare say all IPPs are PPP. They are. Only that the law came much later. But the power purchase agreement that is signed, you develop a power plant, we sign to buy your product for 20, 25 years. We give you a letter of support. We give you now we are using the ATIDI. We've got a very innovative trade insurance which can help us to forestall having to address the headroom of borrowing on or liability on government balance sheet on what we call the partial risk guarantee. So we are now using the ATIDI, Africa Trade Insurance Facility, and therefore, yes, there are many PPPs in energy. We have a very clear framework under EPRA, like I said, a term sheet which dictates what is allowable to be able to have the tariffs right. There's a long waiting list of power generators. There's a long waiting list of people who want to build transmission networks. And unless we get the correct return on investment in line with our term sheets as developed by EPRA, it would be expensive to the economy. So we are working on that. Yes, we have a number of them. But there are none signed lately. You do know, Chairman, that Parliament did put a moratorium on power generation. And we're beginning to have a concern on whether we will not be load shedding by 2027, because I said we're currently developing power for 2027, 2028. And with a moratorium sitting in Parliament, we could be looking at a load shedding unless we work together. So that's just a side comment. Interest on delays. Interest. Let me get from Ichungwa the interest on delay. I didn't get that properly.
Asking. You're asking what you are doing to, these SMSs are too many. How are you going to avoid loss of public funds that is paid to contractors as interest accrued as a result of delayed payments of IPCs?
Thank you. But because I realized I skipped one on the PSC registration of engineers who are employed as technologists, I want to assure members that in numbers, KenGen, Ketraco, Kenya Power employs a lot of technologists. I would really need to check if I was still the minister today, but I will put it in my handover notes to my colleague if it's confirmed, to ensure that we clarify that area of the Kenya technologies, because there's a registration board for the technologies, and there is no reason why it is not the engineers who really do the conductors and who build the network. It is these technologies. It is for transport. It is for transport. So it's an area where I will basically follow up and check and confirm that we don't have any bias. The interest on loans is something we've really prosecuted, and I want to, without really disregarding that question, confirm that we did say the bending bills of 166 is made up of about 97 billion in principal and 60 billion in interest. It is in our interest, Chair, to ensure that we very quickly address the payment of these pending bills and put in a mechanism to ensure that the pending bills challenge, particularly for these ongoing projects, is addressed so that we do not have to pay that kind of money. And I agree it is a loss to the economy having to pay. By the time we finish building those roads, this is part of the cost, and the road moves from 200, 300 million because of interest and penalties on delayed payments. LAPSET, Russell, what was the question on LAPSET?
During the Kibaki government, it was 10 billion. Then they reduced from 18 to 10 billion. But now, over the last 2 financial years, there's only been 35 million.
I think LAPSET framework was meant to be a PPP corridor, as it were, and we did 3 parts where we invested that money to do the 3 parts which are ready. And that's why, Speaker, I said we need to work together to see how to utilize those 3 ports which are complete. We did path of fertilizer which came into the country. We have used it to ship the animals out of the country. We'll need to very quickly spend time marketing the LAPSET corridor. We need, when I talk to the field development plan for the pipeline, it will be following the LAPSET corridor. If we are able to close this field development plan and get the pipeline running along the corridor, we'll need the power lines for hitting the pipeline to run along. We'll need to...
Mr. Speaker, I really want Mr. Chirchir, you confirm, is LAPSET a PPP or it was a Kenya government project that was co-joined with Southern Sudan and Ethiopia?
So, Chair, I will confirm when I go to office. But for now, let me not make commitments because, like I said, it's a very important corridor that Kenya can leverage.
It was conceived as a project between Kenya, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, and partly Uganda. That's why when it was launched by President Kibaki, and I was the foreign minister, Mele Zenawi from Ethiopia was present, Salva Kiir was present, and Museveni sent somebody. It was a dedicated port and corridor to be co-developed by these countries.
And so let me follow up. Like I said in my earlier comments, it's a very important corridor. It helps us to open a new development corridor. It helps us to have a second competitive port to support Mombasa, which is kind of congested. You know, Changamwe is fairly congested. And helps us to be competitive as compared to our neighbors, given the fact that whereas we are serving significantly Uganda, Rwanda, DRC, northern Rwanda and DRC using Mombasa, Lamu, apart from opening a new development corridor for Kenya, will leverage on South Sudan, Ethiopia, because of the challenges of Djibouti today and South Sudan and the challenge they have using the Sudan to export their products, and even the challenge they have with the pipeline at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
In just 2 minutes, can the nominee, you said 2027 we may go to load shedding. Just tell us in 2 minutes, now that you're leaving that ministry, what it means.
He said Parliament put a moratorium on the development of new power projects. Did you say that?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you...
When I came into office as a Minister for Energy and Petroleum, there was a moratorium which had been put by the executive, and I have since gone to Cabinet to lift that moratorium. But soon, Parliament, through a motion from Jane Gagiri Laikipia, did put a motion and suspended all power plants. What we've been doing lately, with the knowledge that Kenyan is fully government, is working on bringing projects to financial close. We really need Parliament to help us, and maybe we need to spend more time with the majority leader to see how we can address whatever challenge there was. Have we addressed it? And therefore, the moratorium should be lifted so that we can license. And then, Chair, like I said, there's been, from the challenge of the year 2000 when there was a major drought and we brought most of the expensive generators, most of them are expiring, and I've talked to the 3 where we are not renewing the request they have made because of the challenge of cost. But more importantly, we need to bring more geothermal, we need to bring solar, and we need to bring more wind at very competitive price to really give advantage to this economy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, nominee. We're coming to an end. Let me ask you only one question. Assuming that LAPSSET does not take off, we have invested heavily in Lamu. Would you consider, if we gave you favor to become the minister, to give meaning to the investment in Lamu by developing a rail line for cargo haulage from Lamu to join the main rail line either at Voi or Mariakani, so that cargo, that instead of being diverted from Mombasa when it's congested to Dar es Salaam, you take it to Lamu and you haul it to Voi or Mariakani and put on the existing rail line, either SGR or the old standard gauge, and be transported to Nairobi and beyond, so that we cannot wait in anticipation like the famous hyena syndrome of thinking the hand will drop when it will not, waiting for LAPSSET, which is dependent on other jurisdictions and other countries. We can still make Lamu work with the least cost development in the manner that I'm proposing to you. What do you think?
That's a great idea, Chairman, in terms of leveraging on the investment of the ground in Lamu already. Lamu is a deep port sea of about 17 meters. We can bring fairly LR2s, very big ships, which can reduce the cost of shipping and ensure that it's a great idea, and that's one thing I would certainly pursue. Very good idea. The distance from Lamu to whether out into Voi, because you don't want to go to Mombasa because of congestion, is just slightly over 150 kilometers, and that doesn't sound like it's a long distance. In terms of waylift,
there will be no heavy waylift. You'll be passing through the
waylift is not a challenge.
Yes. Yeah. We come towards the end. Davis, I ask you a few mundane questions that are nonetheless very important. Have you ever been adversely mentioned in any integrity-related report? You already said your name was dropped in Parliament on the infamous list of shame, and it ended and you went back to office. Do you hold any leadership position in any political party?
No, Chair, I don't.
What is your net worth?
My net worth, I'll need to confirm from, I think 500. There's a small addition from what I was worth last time when I came to, let me check the exact figure on my notes as I take the next question.
Yes. Check, as you check the next question. We have checked your documents against what we have. We find them correct, except you'll have to look at your year of birth. One of the documents says you are born on 30th September 1959. Another one says you are born on 30th September 1960.
The correct date is 1959.
So you should.
It's just the way I think some of.
Just look at your documents.
Absolutely, it is.
Underline. It's not. It's not fatal, but it's important.
I'll do that. I'll do that, Chairman.
Where is this one? Where is the word?
Net worth. Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it, Chair. It is 509,800,000. 509,800,000. I think there's been some small growth of about 27.6 million. Page 7 of the document, and I filed the document.
Yeah. May I ask the nominee, in his statement of net worth, he has put a house in Spring Valley, valued at 95. Is this a historical valuation?
This is an historical valuation.
It must be a very small house.
In the short time, I've not had a chance to revalue.
Spring Valley.
That's what I was actually going to offer him.
Yes.
To buy it at a better price than this. If
half an acre of empty land in Spring Valley is 100 million.
Interestingly, Chairman, these are assets we bought when the value was 9 million. So this is an historical value.
I'm asking that because this valuation is not accurate and therefore cannot be reflecting your true net worth.
Thank you.
95 million if it's for probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Anyway, you have had a nominal growth, you say?
Thank you, Chair.
Yes. If you do correct evaluations, even Matundu is in Westlands.
Matundu is in Westlands.
Yes.
It's a flat.
Oh, a flat.
Yeah.
A flat, that's okay. Spring Valley, half an acre empty land is 100 million. So if you have a house on it, it must be much.
This is an historical value, Chair. I do agree. Thank you.
Yes, that's okay.
Yeah, or maybe Chair, you intended to dispose the property.
But maybe, Honorable Chairperson.
Yes, we are not valuers, anyway.
But Honorable Chairperson, it's probably better to tell the candidates to just say 95 million as at this year, so that because no one is going to go and start doing undertaking a scientific valuation.
No.
But you can say as at this period.
It's okay, Davis. We finish here and we let you go back to your undertakings and wait for the outcome of this process. We wish you well in your undertaking.
Honorable members, Chairman, let me thank the entire Honorable House for this sitting and again reaffirm my commitment to serve. I'm ready, willing, and available to work and address the challenges in this sector. Thank you.
Thank you.